What if I told you that a single American car once sold for $22 million? That is not a mistake. We're talking about a machine that costs more than a private jet, more than a Beverly Hills mansion, and more than the gross domestic product of a small island nation. In the next few minutes, we're counting down the 10 most expensive, rare, and controversial American cars ever sold at auction. One of these cars was hidden in a garage for decades, vanishing from the face of the earth. Another was so dangerous it actually killed its owner. And the number one car on this list, it didn't just break the auction record, it shattered it, leaving a room full of billionaires in total shock. Buckle up. This is the list that redefines the word priceless. We begin our countdown at number 10 with a mystery that plagued the automotive world for over 40 years. Throughout the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, collectors whispered about a specific Ford Mustang. Not just any Mustang, but the Mustang. The Highland Green fastback driven by Steve McQueen in the 1968 film Bullitt. After filming wrapped, the car was sold to a private buyer for a few $1,000s, and then it simply vanished. Steve McQueen himself tried to buy it back multiple times, but the owner refused, parking it in a family garage in Tennessee and burying it under piles of junk to keep it safe from prying eyes. For decades, it was a ghost, a rumor, until January 2020. When the 1968 Ford Mustang GT Bullitt finally rolled onto the stage at Meckham Auctions, the room fell silent. It wasn't shiny, it was battered, it was rusted. It still had the camera mounts welded to the chassis from the movie production. It was arguably the most famous car in American cinema history, presented in its raw, unrestored glory. The bidding war was chaotic, but when the hammer finally fell, it sold for $3.74 million. It proved that dust and rust don't matter when you're buying a piece of Hollywood immortality. But while the Bullitt was a cultural icon, the next car on our list is a mechanical monster that General Motors never wanted you to buy. Coming in at number 9 is the forbidden fruit of the Corvette lineage. Imagine walking into a dealership in 1967. You want a Corvette, but you don't want the one on the showroom floor. You whisper a specific code to the dealer, RPO L88. If the dealer liked you, and if you promised not to drive it on the street, they might order you the 1967 Chevrolet Corvette L88. Only 20 of these cars were produced in 1967. Why so few? Because GM actively discouraged people from buying them. They deleted the heater, they deleted the radio, they stripped out the fan shroud. This wasn't a car designed for a Sunday cruise. It was a race engine barely contained by fiberglass. Rated at a laughable 430 horsepower to trick insurance companies, the L88 actually churned out over 560 horsepower. It was a beast that ate Ferraris for breakfast on the track, and it was notoriously difficult to handle on regular roads. In 2014, one of these mythical beasts, a red coupe, crossed the block at Barrett-Jackson. The price for this forbidden engineering? $3.85 million. It remains one of the most coveted Corvettes in existence. But if you think 500 horsepower is scary, wait until you meet the Flying Mustang. At number 8, we have the car that learned to fly. In 1965, Carroll Shelby had a problem. Ford wanted to turn their secretary's car, the Mustang, into a race winner. Shelby's answer was the 1965 Shelby 350R prototype. Known by its chassis code 5R002, this is the car that started it all. It was the test mule, the lab rat, the very first R model ever built. Legendary driver Ken Mills, the man who would later tame Le Mans, drove this car at Green Valley Raceway in 1965. During that race, he hit a crest so hard that the car launched completely into the air, all 4 wheels severing contact with the asphalt. The photographer snapped the shutter at that exact moment. That image of the Flying Mustang became the marketing goal that sold the Mustang legend to the world. But while the Bullitt was a cultural icon, the next car on our list is a mechanical monster that General Motors never wanted you to buy. Number 7 is widely considered the most dangerous car ever built. They call it the Widowmaker. In 1966, Carroll Shelby decided that the standard 427 Cobra, already one of the fastest cars on Earth, wasn't crazy enough. So he took 2 of them and strapped 2 Paxton superchargers to the V8 engine. The result was an 800-horsepower death trap. He called it the 1966 Shelby Cobra 427 Super Snake. Only 2 were ever built. Shelby kept one for himself. He sold the other to comedian Bill Cosby. Cosby drove it once, was so terrified by the uncontrollable power that he returned it immediately. That second car was later sold to a man named Tony Maxey. Tragically, the throttle stuck, and Maxey drove it off a cliff into the Pacific Ocean, destroying the car and losing his life. That left only one Super Snake in the world, Carroll Shelby's personal car. When it came up to auction in 2021 at Barrett-Jackson, the air in the room grew heavy. This wasn't just a car, it was a survivor. It sold for $5.5 million. A staggering number. But as we move into the top 6, we leave the road behind and enter the world of prototypes that were never meant to exist. At number 6, we have a unicorn that shouldn't be here. When Ford declared war on Ferrari in the 1960s, they built the GT40. It was a closed-cockpit endurance racer designed to survive 24 hours of punishment. But what if you took the roof off? Meet the 1965 Ford GT40 Roadster prototype. Only 5 of these open-top developmental cars were ever built. They were experimental, raw, and ultimately abandoned by the factory because the aerodynamics just didn't work for the high speeds of Le Mans. Most prototypes are crushed to hide trade secrets, but this one survived. It was driven by the icons, Carroll Shelby, Jim Clark, and Ken Mills. It represents a what-if moment in history. What if Ford had gone to Le Mans with a Roadster? Because it is so incredibly rare to find a GT40 without a roof, collectors lost their minds when it appeared at RM Sotheby's. The hammer dropped at $7.65 million. It's a lot of money for a car that messes up your hair, but the next car on our list proves that sometimes the most valuable things are the ones that went to war. Number 5 is a veteran of the greatest racing battle in history. The 1966 Ford GT40 Mark II. This isn't a replica. This isn't a show car. This is one of the actual chassis that Ford sent to France in 1966 to crush Ferrari at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Driven by Mark Donohue and Paul Hawkins, this car battled through the rain and the darkness of that legendary race. While it didn't take the checkered flag due to a differential failure, it was part of the armada that secured America's greatest racing victory. For decades, it was a silent veteran, a piece of history you could touch. When it hit the auction block in 2018, the market reacted with a frenzy. A genuine Le Mans-raced Mark II is almost never for sale. The result? A price tag of $9.79 million. It seems impossible to top a car that actually raced at Le Mans, but to break the $10 million barrier, we have to travel back in time to an era of pure, unadulterated luxury. Number 4 is the king of the Depression era. Let's step back to the 1930s. Long before Ford fought Ferrari, there was one American brand that stood above Rolls-Royce, Bugatti, and Mercedes. Duesenberg. In the middle of the Great Depression, when most Americans were struggling to buy bread, the 1931 Duesenberg Model J long-wheelbase coupe was a rolling statement of infinite wealth. This particular car, known as the Whittle Coupe, was a one-off custom build for Captain George Whittle, Jr., a playboy who owned a pet lion and a 600-foot castle in Lake Tahoe. The car is a masterpiece of Art Deco design. It is 20 feet of arrogance, and it has barely been touched by time, retaining its original chassis, engine, and bodywork, a rarity for cars of this era.
When it sold in 2011, it became the first American car to break the 8-figure barrier, selling for $10.34 million. For years, it held the crown, but the 1960s were calling, and they brought a movie star with them. Number 3 is the Hollywood hero. If you ask any racing fan to picture a race car, they will likely picture this: powder blue paint, orange stripe, the Gulf livery. This is the 1968 Ford GT40 Gulf Mirage. But this isn't just a race car, it's a cinema legend. This specific chassis was used as the camera car for Steve McQueen's legendary film Le Mans. To keep up with the race cars at 200 miles per hour, they had to cut the roof off this GT40 and mount massive cameras to it. It sacrificed its body for cinema history. After the movie, it was restored back to its original glory, but the connection to the king of cool, Steve McQueen, added a premium that no ordinary race car could match. In 2012 at RM Auctions, the McQueen magic struck hard. The car sold for $11 million. At the time, it was a world record. But the GT40 story gets even deeper, because to understand the value of the GT40, you have to go back to the car that gave it its DNA. Number 2 is the origin species. Every legend has a beginning. This is it. The 1962 Shelby 2000 Cobra, CSX 2000. This is the very first Shelby Cobra ever built, the personal car of Carroll Shelby himself. The story of this car is pure genius. When Shelby was launching the company, he only had this one car, but he needed the press to think he had a factory full of them. So he would send CSX 2000 to a magazine for a test drive, then paint it red. Then he'd paint it blue and send it to another magazine. He painted it yellow for the next. He fooled the entire world with one single car. Shelby owned it until the day he died. The leather seats are ripped from his jeans. The dings in the bodywork are from his manufacturing tests. It is the holiest of holy grails for American car collectors. In 2016, it became the most expensive American car of its time, selling for $13.75 million. For years, it held the crown, but the 1960s were calling, and they brought a movie star with them. We have reached the summit. Number 1, the most expensive American vintage car ever sold. It isn't a Cobra, it isn't a GT40, it is the 1935 Duesenberg SSJ. To understand this car, you have to understand the context. In 1935, a standard car had maybe 80 horsepower. This monster, it had 400. It was a supercharged beast that could do 140 miles per hour when most roads were still made of dirt. Only 2 were ever made. One went to Clark Gable, this one went to Gary Cooper. Legend has it that Gable and Cooper, the 2 biggest stars in Hollywood, used to race these leviathans through the Los Angeles hills, terrifying everyone in their path. For decades, this car was the crown jewel of a private collection, hidden away from the public market. It was assumed it would never be sold. But in 2018, Gooding & Company did the impossible. They brought it to Pebble Beach. The bidding opened at 10 and didn't stop. It climbed to 15, 18, 20. When the hammer finally fell, the room erupted. $22 million. It stands alone, a rolling sculpture of American excess, power, and Hollywood glamour that may never be equaled. From the dusty garage where the Bullitt Mustang hid to the sun-drenched hills where Gary Cooper raced his Duesenberg, these aren't just cars, they are time capsules. They are metal witnesses to history, bearing the scars of Le Mans and the fingerprints of legends. They remind us that while money can buy the machine, it's the stories, the danger, the mystery, and the glory that are truly priceless. If you had unlimited funds, which one would you park in your garage? The raw danger of the Super Snake or the movie magic of the Bullitt Mustang? Let me know in the comments below.